270 electoral votes you need to be elected president of the United States. And a lot of people are already looking at the possibility this could be Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump.
Now, a Sanders supporter will say, hey, not yet, especially after the win in Indiana tonight, but her delegate math is pretty convincing. Donald Trump, you just heard Wolf just moments ago saying he will win in November, and he took after Hillary Clinton. This map we're showing you right here is the 2012 map. This is Barack Obama, the blue states, versus Mitt Romney, the red states. Another way to look at it is we could do this. This is our first CNN battleground map for the 2016 election. If they're dark red, we believe they're likely to stay red. If they're dark blue, we think they're likely to stay blue. And you see the lighter shades for likely Democratic states or likely Republican states. Let me start, Wolf, on this map because it's easier to make the case our panel has been discussing. So what does Donald Trump say? Donald Trump says, I can beat Hillary Clinton in places that are traditionally Democratic. Well, if he has that success in what Jeffrey Lord was just calling the Rust Belt, if Donald Trump can do that, and Democrats watching are going to say, hey, wait a minute, it won't happen. But if Donald Trump can win in Pennsylvania, if Donald Trump can win in Ohio, Michigan, and then come over here and win Wisconsin, he's the president of the United States. You can do it. Now, you can do it. I make it sound easy. Those are 4 states that have been traditionally Democratic for a long time. But it can be done just in this part of the country, which is why Donald Trump reaches out to Bernie Sanders supporters, why Donald Trump talks about the trade message. In his mind and his campaign team's mind, you can do this in one part of the country where he has proven that he has appealed to blue-collar workers. Now, the Clinton campaign would never concede this is going to happen. They're going to say that this state, Pennsylvania, has not gone Republican since George H.W. Bush. They're going to say we're going to compete in all these other states. They're going to say you're never going to take that away. But let's just say I picked these 2. Let's say Donald Trump gets 2 of them. Where else does he go? That is the fascinating question for the Trump campaign. Obviously, Florida is one of the biggest prizes. Hillary Clinton believes with the Latino vote, with the suburban vote in a changing state, that she can keep it. But what if Donald Trump won Florida? This is now the chess game going on in both campaigns. How do you change the map? Can Donald Trump put these states in play? If so, where does Hillary Clinton go looking? Let's say Donald Trump, I don't think that one we should do just yet, but let's leave this one blue. Let's say Donald Trump wins these 3. Hillary Clinton's still winning here. Where does Trump go for the other one? Well, he's going to have to try in smaller states, like in Iowa, in smaller states, like in New Hampshire. It starts to even out the math. So as we begin the calculations and the thinking about the general election, there's no question for Donald Trump the first test is change the map in the industrial states that have been reliably blue for quite a long time. If you're Hillary Clinton, what are you looking at? You think it's possible, with a high Latino turnout, that you might be able to turn Arizona. You think it's possible if you can get a high African-American turnout, and if conservatives say never Trump and stay home, you could turn a state like Georgia with a combination of high Democratic turnout, suppressed conservative turnout. These are the calculations now going on in the campaigns. But as I reset this, I just want to reset it and come back to this. As you look at the Obama-Romney map, the biggest test for the Trump campaign is actually to prove and have the polling prove that you can compete across here. Because if you can make the Democrats spend time, money, resources here, then it can change the map in other ways. But as we begin to think about this and what Donald Trump said tonight, I think any early calculation of the electoral map looking ahead has to put to the test, can Donald Trump do across from battleground Pennsylvania across over here into Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the like, include Iowa and that. Illinois, I think, is most unlikely. But go across this belt right here. If he can change the map here, he has the potential to make it a very different race.
Now, we're talking hypothetically about a contest between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. But Bernie Sanders, he did win in Indiana tonight, an important win for him tonight. And his supporters are going to say, why aren't we paying attention to his win?
Right.
The answer is it's proportional.
It's proportional. And look, if Bernie Sanders were somehow to become the Democratic nominee, you'd be having the very same conversation about the electoral map in those states. But here's the issue for Bernie Sanders. Let me take the superdelegates off the table for a minute. We give Bernie Sanders Indiana. Hillary Clinton began the night with a more than 300 lead in just pledged delegates. Bernie Sanders will shave into that tonight, but Wolf, he's going to cut a very modest because of the proportional Democratic rules. Even if he wins he's up now by 7 points. Even if he wins by 7 points, you split the delegates 53-46, something roughly along those lines. So he'll gain, maybe count the delegate, 10 or 15 or 20 in the delegate count tonight, but she starts way over 315. And if you play this out the rest of the way, number one, if he won everything left, 55-45, a bigger margin that he's winning tonight, he still wouldn't catch up. He still wouldn't catch up. Number two, that's unlikely. So if you just play this out this way, give half the states to Sanders. We're giving California to Clinton here. I know Sanders supporters say they're going to take California. We'll see what happens. But if you split the remaining states, she gets the big one, California, 55-45. He still gets a lot of delegates. She gets the big one, New Jersey, 55-45. He still gets a lot of delegates. In that scenario, we're somewhere out here. And the Sanders campaign team has talked about, well, if he starts winning, we will change the Democratic superdelegates. Maybe, but there is zero evidence of that right now. Zero evidence that Democratic superdelegates who get votes at the convention or overwhelmingly bring them into the equation. She goes off the chart. She goes past our final mark here. She has 513 right now to 41 for Senator Sanders. There is no reason to believe, well, if she keeps losing, we'll revisit with these people. But one state is not going to do it.
Let's go back to the electoral map, the Electoral College map, looking ahead to November of this year. How much of an uphill struggle would Donald Trump have, let's say, compared to Mitt Romney 4 years ago? Well,
it depends how you look at it. On the one hand, Donald Trump would say, and I think even Democrats, we should bring Mr. Axelrod into the conversation and see what that in these states, Trump has proven in the primaries he's an unorthodox candidate. We do know that a lot of these blue-collar, working-class voters are unhappy. They're voting for Bernie Sanders, so they're unhappy, at least in the primaries, with Hillary Clinton. Does that mean they'll be Trump Republicans? It means nothing. But do we know from the history of Ronald Reagan, for example, that you can create Reagan Democrats in a place like Michigan? It is possible. So even Democrats can see Trump has opportunities in these states. Doesn't mean he'll win them, but he has opportunities in these states that they don't think Mitt Romney or John McCain ever had because of his appeal to blue-collar workers. On the other hand, as I said, if you look at the demographics, oftentimes in politics, forget the candidates. You look at the demographics of the electorate. If you look at this is the Obama coalition. I just switched Michigan over, but this is the Obama coalition, which was remarkably consistent in 2 elections. Obama won Indiana and North Carolina in 2008, gave them back in 2012. They were the 2 most conservative states he won in 2008, and he lost them in 2012 to Mitt Romney. So if you're Hillary Clinton, this is where you start. And you say, what am I at risk of losing? Well, she would have to defend, as I said, she would have to defend Pennsylvania and Ohio. She would have to defend Michigan. She would probably have to defend in Wisconsin. Some of the smaller states, Iowa, New Hampshire, Trump lost Iowa, but he has some blue-collar appeal. He won New Hampshire. I can tell you the Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte does not think Donald Trump can win New Hampshire in November, but we'll see. Donald Trump, remember, Wolf, when we started this, Donald Trump wasn't going to be the nominee, right? Donald Trump didn't have a chance. Donald Trump was running against the deepest, broadest, most experienced Republican class of candidates in our lifetime. Well, Donald Trump is the presumptive Republican nominee tonight. So you look at this map, you say with the things he has said about Latinos, with his standing among women, with his standing among African Americans, that today there's every reason to believe Hillary Clinton has a good opportunity to repeat this map based on polling, based on demographics, based on the campaign. But how many times has Donald Trump forced us to go back and rethink what paper tells us, what the data tells us, because he has changed our politics. So again, I would say for Hillary Clinton that if you want to win the presidency, you're going to focus on this area right here, probably take New York out of the equation, although Trump even says he's going to compete in New York. Again, New York hasn't gone Republican for president for quite a long time, but this area of the country, which is traditionally reliably blue, where hardly any money is spent in the general election, because except for Ohio. Ohio is always a battleground state, but not much money in the general election is spent in Pennsylvania after Labor Day. Some Republicans test the waters in Michigan. They usually end up pulling out at least by the end of September. We're going to see money, time, and resources spent in places that traditionally, in the past 10 or 15 years, 20 years even, have not been general election battlegrounds. And again, we're going to see if Clinton can try to stretch the map here, try to stretch the map there. But this will be, until proven otherwise by data, a traditional election with a lot of focus across the industrial Midwest.